Such a humble beginning. His arrival wasn't announced to kings. It wasn't made before large crowds. Jesus' birth was revealed to men protecting sheep. And yet, could this have been any more fitting for a man who would become the greatest shepherd in the world? We're here in Israel. It's episode 1. We're trying to focus on the birth and the infancy of Jesus. So what are some of the things that we're going to try to go see and visit today?
Well, the first thing we're going to go see is down in Bethlehem. This is where the traditional location of where Jesus was born. Of course, we know he was born in the city, but there's a number of different ideas about exactly where. But we're going to go to one particular place called the Church of the Nativity.
Okay, so we know from the Gospels that during a Roman census, Joseph and Mary come down, and when they get down to Bethlehem, there's no room for them in what the English version says is an inn. We have some images in our imagination that we conjure up when we picture an inn.
The word in the book of Luke is the word kataluma, which literally means a guest room. So when they arrived in Bethlehem, there was no room in the guest room.
Okay.
Which makes sense because there were a number of families there who have come for the census.
That's going to be an interesting sight. You know, we're crossing a border there to go into Bethlehem.
Even though Jerusalem and Bethlehem are only 6 miles apart, there is a security barrier there between Israel and the West Bank.
Now, Luke, the historian of the Gospels, records that in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all went to be registered, each to his own town. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary his betrothed, who was with child. Now, the text talks about Mary and Joseph going up, even though they're heading south. Could you explain that?
The idea here in the scriptures is that you're rising in elevation. The city of Nazareth sits in the Galilean hills, and from the Jezreel Valley, which is fairly close to sea level, you will rise nearly 3,000 feet coming to Jerusalem.
Now, we really want to go see the first century steps at the southern wall of the Temple Mount. There's some significance there to the birth and the infancy of Jesus.
There is. After Jesus was born, his family, being a good Jewish family, went to Jerusalem to have him dedicated at the temple, and they would have gone up those first century steps that we will visit.
All right, so there's some significant events that take place in the life of Jesus, just even at 40 days old.
Bethlehem is only 6 miles to our south. It sits in the West Bank, and so we'll need to travel down there to see all this.
I had no idea Bethlehem was that close to Jerusalem. I'm really excited to go see the Church of the Nativity. When we got to the Church of the Nativity, Barry explained the different sized doors and the humility gate, or the humility door. You have to bow to get underneath it.
What we're looking at here is a statue of Jerome, who translated the Latin version of the Vulgate.
Barry, these arches are incredible.
They are. They're really pretty.
I'm really glad you brought me here.
Oh, this is one of the places I really love to come. But as pretty as this church is, there's something underneath the ground that I think you'll be interested in. Well, one of the things I appreciate about traveling around Israel is because it helps me to make the Bible stories even more real.
Barry, in Matthew chapter 2, Matthew records that after the birth of Jesus, Herod is trying to get him. He's threatened by this king that's going to take his kingdom. And so in a dream, Joseph is told to take Mary, take Jesus, and flee to Egypt. They do that. Herod is frustrated that he missed his opportunity. And so in Matthew 2:16, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he became furious and sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Now, that verse is connected to what we're standing next to.
It is. What they found in here are a number of burial chambers and ossuaries in which small children, very young children, were buried. There's some first century tombs down there that they think this is where a number of the babies that during the first century were buried. And this possibly relates to the story in Matthew's 2nd chapter that we read about.
Now, when my mind goes to that event and I read through the Gospels, I think of a larger city. I think of hundreds of children, thousands of children that would fit that criteria. But that's really not what's going on here, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, Bethlehem of modern day is around 60 to 70,000 people. Bethlehem in the first century would have just been several hundred. And so when we think about all the children who were killed, it wasn't in the hundreds or thousands. It was really probably in the number of dozens. Of course, any death is one too many.
To think about what Herod did because he thought Jesus was a competitor to his throne is just, it's horrifying. It's such a haunting reminder of such a terrible time. And all of that was an attempt to get at Jesus as an infant. It was very sobering. It's very sobering to think about. Down in this cave, they found the remains of children that Herod massacred trying to kill Jesus as an infant. And to think that that was the way things worked, I mean, Herod the Great ended up killing some of his own children, one of his own wives, so it wasn't unprecedented for him. But that's not something that civilized people do. That's not something that's a part of our culture. And so it was sobering. It really established the reality of the event. This isn't something that was imagined. It wasn't something that was made up. You know, with fairy tales and everything else, you want to dress things up and get rid of the ugly parts. And the Gospels don't do that. The Gospels say, this is what happened, even if it's not pleasant, even if you wish it hadn't. And that was one of those moments. Up at the front, there are 3 different religious groups, 3 different churches that maintain the main portion of the church. There was one group that came in and they were praying and doing their morning mass, and then another group came in and they were supposed to clean up, and then another group came in and went down and prayed inside of the cave. So to watch multiple groups maintain the same space was really, I mean, it was different. That's not anything I've ever seen. Barry was able to take us to the cave where the traditional location of Jesus' birth was, and the traditional location of where the stone manger was found that he was laid in. When we use the phrase a traditional location, we mean that this location has a rich heritage going back millennia in some instances to identify a general location.
A lot of the times that means we have a history of people passing down that information from generation to generation.
We may not know the exact rock or piece of dirt, but it's fairly confident to say it's in this general area that this event took place. And we should probably add that God never meant for us to worship a piece of ground. He never meant for us to worship a specific site. What was important for him was what happened at those places.
All right, Jeremy, this is what I wanted to show you. We're down in a cave underneath the Church of the Nativity here in Bethlehem. This is the traditional location of where Jesus Christ was born. The 14 points around the star represent the generations from Abraham to David, David to the exile, and the exile to Jesus.
And those 14 generations, those are captured for us in Matthew chapter 1.
That's right.
And all day long, people are going to be coming down here, they're going to be touching it, they're going to be kissing it, they're going to be leaving prayers down in this little alcove. Now, this marks that spot, but there's something else down here we want to see.
Yes, on the other side of the cave here, there is a little alcove in which they believe the manger sat.
Let's go look at that.
Okay.
Barry, we're only about 12 feet away from that 14-pointed star. What is it that we're looking at?
Well, we read in the Bible that after Jesus was born, that they laid him in a manger. As you can see here, we're underneath this little cave, this little alcove in the cave here. This is the traditional location of where that manger laid.
This was a fantastic honor to be able to come down here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the misconceptions that most Westerners have ties back to the idea of Jesus was born in a barn. There was no room in the hotel, so they went to the stables and he was placed in a wooden trough, and just that whole picture. And understanding the cultural difference, no, there was no room in the family guest house, so they went to this cave where the animals were kept for privacy and seclusion and placed in a stone manger after he was born. I think corrects a lot of cultural misunderstandings. It's hard to imagine what that must have looked like because so much structure has been built on top of it. It's not natural rock. They've been burning incense down there for millennia. They have pictures of Mary and Jesus as an infant all over the walls. You have all kinds of decorations, and it's hard to imagine. But one of the things that did help was it communicated the idea of going into a cave. You take these steps down and around a curve, and so you have the sense of you're going underground. You think about the Son of God coming down to earth and being born in the back of a cave with animals in the seclusion and privacy of the hills of Bethlehem, without any trumpeting, without any fanfare, without any attendance other than his parents. And to think about how humble his beginning was. And that was intentional. He was willing to choose that. And to get a better visual of that drives that point home even more strongly. As we walked up to the sheep, they were slowly munching grass coming towards us, and we could hear this underlying crunching and munching. And there were a couple of them that were wearing the bells, so you could hear a couple ringing, and we were trying to figure out which one has the bell around its neck. There was one that looked to be lame, and so he was slowly following all the rest of them. And then to see this young boy, who barely looks like he's in his teens, was leading this flock of dozens of sheep around. And it was just really sweet to watch. It was very tender. One of the things that Luke records for us in chapter 2 is that in the region of Bethlehem, the same region that Jesus was born, that night there were some shepherds out in the field with their sheep. And as they were tending their flocks, an angel came and announced the birth of Jesus. And they celebrated and wanted to go meet him. It would have looked a lot like this. It would have been dark. There would have been the bright light. And as they rejoiced, they would have been excited to know that the Messiah had been born. Being out there on that hillside, it was so much easier to imagine the night of Jesus' birth and to imagine a dark hillside while these shepherds are putting their sheep down for the night. They're resting, it's quiet and calm, and then all of a sudden there's this angelic announcement about the birth of the Messiah, and they start worshiping and praising, and I've just got that image stuck in my head now.
And our guide actually made a great point when we were out there in the fact that because shepherds are always awake while they're working and because they see other flocks and other shepherds, that the best way during the first century to carry a message out is through the shepherds. And so maybe that was why God chose to send the angels to the shepherds first, because they would be able to spread the word, spread the good news of the birth of Jesus.
One of the things coming to Israel does is it helps put into perspective distances. I always visualize Bethlehem is just an hour's drive or 2 hours drive from Jerusalem. You know, Bethany is so far over here. The Mount of Olives was so far over here. That's not the case. So the distance just from Bethlehem to Jerusalem
Is 6 miles. 6 miles.
that's a 1 hour walk. You know, that's less than a 1 hour walk if you're jogging or really trying to get it done. And so to realize it really wasn't that far from where Joseph's family was to come to the Temple Mount, They had already traveled all the way down from Galilee to Bethlehem. To get from Bethlehem to the Temple Mount was nothing. And to be here in person and to have made that trip puts that in perspective.
And I think also you get an appreciation for not only distance, but altitude. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is from Luke chapter 19, in which it says, and Jesus, after finishing his conversation with people in Jericho, it says he went up to Jerusalem. Well, what does that mean? It's a simple phrase, but what we learn is just within that 15 miles, you go up nearly 3,500 feet in elevation. Your ears are popping and all kinds of things as you go up the hill. It gives you a great appreciation for exactly what Jesus went through as he went up the mountain.
The historian Luke records for us over in chapter 2, when the time came for the purification according to the law of Moses, they brought Jesus up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male who first opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. Now, we are standing right next to the Temple Mount on a Herodian, a first century road. This is the area that they would have come to present Jesus.
They would have come to Jerusalem to present Jesus in the temple.
So they've come down from Galilee because of the census. They stop in Bethlehem. Mary gives birth there. And then they bring Jesus to the Temple Mount. And we're standing in the shade of the Temple Mount right now. So this is a totally different feel than what they were used to back home up in Galilee. A slower pace, it would have been more calm, more rustic, fewer people. And then they come to the hustle and bustle of Jerusalem.
And this would really be the big city. I mean, they have really come to the big city. Up in Galilee, you have farms and you have, of course, the lake and all the serenity that's up there. But when they came here, this would have been an eye-opening experience for any of the Jewish people coming from the north.
And we know that they made annual trips down to Jerusalem, but this would have been a special trip.
It would have been for the family, yes.
You know, the birth of their firstborn. They're coming to the temple to dedicate their son. They would have been purchasing some small turtle doves or something from the shops along the way here. How do we know that this is a first century road? What identifies it as that?
Well, this road was uncovered by archaeologists about just a couple of decades ago. This road is very typical of roads of that time. It has the same look and feel that other Herodian roads do. As you'll notice, there are some holes in the road. That is caused for two reasons. One is it's 2,000 years old.
Okay.
And so it is just sunk in a little bit. And the other has to do with all these big boulders that are here behind us. We know that in 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the city of Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And when they did, they burned the temple and burned a lot of the things up there. In doing so, they pushed a number of the rocks off of the Temple Mount and they landed on this road. And that caused a lot of damage to this road as well.
They're huge. I mean, those aren't even potholes. I mean, you could fit a car inside of some of those.
Large holes.
Now, when they uncovered the road several decades ago to help us understand the size and the weight of those stones, they left the street the way it was.
They did. And it helps us to appreciate just how destructive the Romans were to this city at that time.
There are layers of history to walking on this first century street. We have rubble from the destruction of the Temple Mount in 70 AD by the Romans. To the side, you see the shops. It helps you visualize what was going on around the Temple Mount. And of course, we know that Jesus was frustrated by that when he went there as an adult. The pavement, the stone pavers are huge. They're huge. I mean, everything that Herod did was on such a massive scale. And to see the finesse and the beauty and the scale and just everything was overwhelming.
Being able to walk on that Herodian street, knowing it's the exact same street that many people in the first century would have walked on, that's just awe-inspiring because you realize that you're walking through history.
And when we're there, Barry's trying to reconstruct things for us. So while we're looking at the wall and see just a few stones jutting out of it, he's trying to explain there was this arch that came out, and then there were some steps that led down to it. And so he's trying to fill in the gaps, and you're trying to picture in your mind's eye what this looked like complete. And he does a great job at that. To get the idea of the magnitude of what we're looking at, there is a rock in that wall under the ground. You can go see that. It's over 500 tons heavy, 45 feet long, and you can see other stones a little bit smaller than that, but still hundreds of tons, and they make up the blocks of this western wall of the temple. And so as you're walking along this first century Herodian street, Mary and Joseph would have been seeing that. You know, it was a source of pride for the Jews to have such a glorious Temple Mount. When we look at the Temple Mount, when we look at the shops and the stones that make up those structures, there's something unique that makes them Herodian as well too. What is that?
King Herod not only built big things, he wanted to make sure it looked good. And if you'll look at a lot of the stones here on the Temple Mount and the Western Wall and even on these shops behind us, not only are they perfectly cut and perfectly set in place, but they all have little etching around them.
I mean, some of the things that people have pointed out is that you can't even slip a piece of paper. Even now, 2,000 years later, you can't fit a piece of paper into some of those cracks.
That's correct. Each one of these stones was specifically cut for the position it's located.
So that's amazing from a design, engineering, architectural standpoint, that they were able to do something so refined 2,000 years ago.
That's right. Many of these stones were cut from quarries a few miles north of Jerusalem. So it's not even like they were cutting the stones here and could compare them. They had to cut them up there and then bring them down and then chisel them into place to make sure they're exactly the right side, then slide them in.
So coming from Bethlehem, they would have walked down this Herodian first century street. They would have gone around the corner here to the first century steps and entered the Temple Mount that way to present him to the Lord.
That's exactly right.
It would have been a lifetime moment for them. That would have stuck with them for the rest of their lives. I remember how excited I was at the birth of every single one of my children. And I remember how excited I was to introduce them to family. This is their name. Everything that went along with introducing a new life, a new family member. And to stand on that Herodian street at this immense moment for this young couple, this birth of this extra special child that Joseph has chosen to take on as his own, and to think about going there to dedicate him, just as a father, I think about it from that perspective. And being there on the Herodian street really helped me do that. In this episode of Following the Messiah, we've been to several different places talking about the birth of Jesus. We've talked about Mary and Joseph coming down for the census. They go to Bethlehem. We went to the Church of the Nativity. We went over to the Temple Mount to talk about his dedication. There's something else that we need to focus in on though. In Luke chapter 1, Luke records for us the announcement of the birth of John the Baptist to his father Zachariah. In that same chapter, the announcement to Mary of the birth of Jesus to his mother. And in both of those instances, each of the parents responds in a similar way. Each one is shocked by the angel appearing to them. Each one is afraid. The angel encourages each one to not be afraid, but to believe and to respond. Zachariah did not, but Mary did. The challenge for us is to figure out how we're going to respond to the birth of Jesus. Are we going to trust the gospel accounts? Are we going to trust them as reliable? Are we going to choose to believe in the miraculous birth of Jesus or not? We hope that during this episode, we've helped to increase the possibility that you too would choose to believe in the Gospels and in the miraculous birth of Jesus.